Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Julia Auer, and I'm going to be talking about my personal experiences teaching groups with parents and young children online during the spring and fall of 2020. The groups that I teach exist for a very specific purpose. They're meant to offer students at the University of Music and Performing Arts in Vienna the possibility of learning how to make music in group settings. And the groups that I had last year were around 3 years of age, the children, obviously, and about 5 to 6 families per group, which meant 10 to 12 participants per group. And when we had to go online, I didn't relish the idea right away of doing group lessons online. I actually thought it wasn't possible. So at first I sent musical videos, input, musical songs, musical activities that the parents could do at home with their children. But I soon felt the need, especially for my students, to offer them some semblance of a live lesson to participate in. And I also more and more felt the need to stay more connected to the families in my groups. I was encouraged to go online by the experiences of my colleagues, especially by Agnes Heide and Christina Kanitz-Pock. We were constantly comparing what worked, what didn't work. It was interesting to have this feedback too. It was quite obvious what was not going to work. What was not going to work is, as we all know, since there's always some delay of some sort, we cannot make music together in the sense of at the same rhythmically and harmonically structured time, since there's always somebody who's going to be later, or everybody is going to be at some different time. But there are a lot of musically connected activities that do work. Let me just list a few of them. For instance, soundscapes, musical atmospheres, free improvisations work. Some sort of music -1 in a way works. It works when I or one of the students or one of the participants makes music for the muted group, and they accompany that player, that musician at home, or dance to the music or sing to the music. Call and response patterns work. Of course, moving to music, dancing to music works. Drawing and painting to music works very well. Using the whole room, making musical parkours in the apartments works well. And searching for sounds, searching for sound makers and making musical instruments also works rather well. It was important for my personal mindset that I had to be very clear that I was not going to have any control really about on the musical output of the activities that I suggested. I love relinquishing control of the musical output eventually during the course of a lesson and just becoming a member of the music making community. But right from the outset, that was quite a challenge for me personally, to just put the material out there and trust that something was going to happen with it and that the parents would rise to the challenge and be able to encourage the children enough with my help, with what I could furnish and help, to keep their children engaged and musically active. What helped for the variety of the lessons was that I had the students present during the lessons, and not all of them, but some of them during one lesson would contribute something to hear, a small activity. So sometimes I became, in a way, like the host of a musical lesson, of a musical timeline, and would present one or the other activity. In general, how were these lessons organized? I had to keep them shorter. Usually I aim for a length of 50 to 60 minutes. Online, I aimed for about 35 minutes of musical activity, plus and minus, greeting everybody, letting people into the Zoom room. We were at the utmost at 45 minutes. Usually around 40 minutes of activity was possible, since it is, of course, much more of a challenge to keep children engaged via screen than if they're in the same room with you. And especially if you lose their focus, it's very hard to get them re-engaged, something that's much easier when they're in the same setting as you are. The lessons were organized like my normal lessons, greeting, song, where everybody was involved. And then I like to center all my lessons around one seminal musical idea, something rather short and sweet and succinct and very precise, often a contrast. Let's say, for example, light and dark sounds, fast and slow, that kind of thing. That's something a lesson will be centered around. And all other activities are supposed to raise musical and sensory awareness for this topic before we actually get to the music making and sort of then move out of it again with some sort of cooling down after all this concentration. I noticed that working online, since the lesson was so much shorter, also had to keep these seminal musical ideas really short and really simple and sweet and rather tightly contained in a way. I asked the parents for feedback, and at first it was very enthusiastic because they were so happy to have some sense of normality restored, to have Thursday 3 o'clock be once again their music time. Of course, their engagement in the lesson is much more challenging than when they're in the music room with me, because they're the ones actually leading the musical activities. And what was quite an interesting observation made by some parents is that the children, the young children, rose to interacting with the screen, took to that like ducks to water, while they, of a generation that my mother called Generation TV, where you're used to sitting in front of the screen and just watching passively, had to learn that they would actively have to participate, take part, encourage their children, be responsible for all the setup, all the things used in the lessons, so that they were becoming like a co-teacher in a way in the lessons. The parents are of utmost importance. It worked very, very well with the parents that actively engaged, and was also sometimes, I think, quite challenging, quite strenuous in a way, energy level wise, but enjoyably enough. And they wanted to keep the connection to music going and to my classes going. What is very important and possible via Zoom or via whatever video platform you use is to give resonance. You're able to see what the families are doing and able to comment on that, which is very important. Resonance is a term that Christina, for instance, uses a lot, to observe, to validate, to verbalize what the children, what the families are doing, without judging, without praising even, just observing and giving it even more life by verbalizing what is going on. Now, were there positive effects? Yes, it kept us connected. It kept us sane. It gave us joy. There was one group that really flourished under these circumstances, and that were the children that were very introverted in the normal group settings and overwhelmed by all the input and all the activities and all the sounds and all the other children. They flourished at home. I was very surprised to see children that usually just sit next to their mother or on their mother or father's or granny's lap, be extremely active in the safety of their own home. And they even, after the online lessons were over, they brought this security back into the live lessons. What also happened is since the musical material was present at home, it was taken up more frequently, since it was there. The little box with the rice in it was there. The bottle filled with water was there, and children would engage and remember these musical activities even more than if it had happened in another place with instruments that they just do not have in their own home. And the preparation for the lessons, with all the gathering of their own music makers, of their own stuffed animals, of their toys having to do with the topic of the lessons. I always sent that beforehand. That gathering became a very important part of the lesson and an enjoyable part. So if I had to continue doing this, I would probably need a camera team, other software, internet like the Pentagon. Then it could be even more enjoyable. even so, I was surprised at what was possible. And I'm looking forward to talking to you afterwards in the breakout room about your experiences and exchanging with you what more worked, what didn't work, and hope to see you in a couple of minutes. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.